Welcome to another installment of Deconstructing Babylon, where we discern the signs and symbols of the mystery religion of Hollywood Babylon. I'm the Discerning Clerk, and I use a biblical framework to deconstruct my favorite movies from the 90s.
Noticed your eyeglasses. They don't have any lenses in them.
They're my dad's. The lenses hurt my eyes.
Some of you may have noticed this little kitten roaming about in my last video, and I wanted to share a quick story time about her. We live on an acreage, and all manner of animals have spent some time in the house. The first two cats we got have been barn cats for over a year now. They're both fixed after having 2 litters, and we haven't had any kittens for months. A few days after my daughter passed, my husband found this scared baby in the barn, fighting for her life against our dogs, chickens, and other cats. There was no mama cat around, and we had no idea where she came from. My husband brought her into the house. She was so tiny, shaking from fear of a traumatized life, but it was almost as if she knew she was safe now. She ate a lot that first day and was never far from me or my husband. In fact, she slept in our bed that night, right between our heads. The more she grew, the more her little personality came out. She's super sweet, but a little spicy. She reminds me of my daughter, who loved all animals, and I know would have loved this one too. I know her spirit isn't actually in this little kitten. I wouldn't even joke about something like that. But it feels like a hug from our Heavenly Father, a small blessing, a tiny vessel to pour out our love that has nowhere else to go but to our grief. We called her Bluebell because that's what we think our daughter would have liked. Thanks be to God, for his goodness never ends. All right, story time is over. Let's get to what we came here for. Philadelphia is an Academy Award-winning drama that speaks to some serious issues that plagued the late 80s and early 90s. It was released in 1993, making me too young to understand the complex and mature themes tackled within, but watching it nonetheless. It garners 4 stars from the Video Movie Guide, which says, Tom Hanks' Oscar-winning portrayal of an AIDS-infected attorney battling for his rights is the main draw in this heartfelt drama. Denzel Washington is equally good as the homophobic attorney who must confront his own prejudice and ignorance after he agrees to take on the case, in which Hanks alleges that he lost his job at a prestigious law firm because of discrimination. Ron Neiswaner's screenplay is a masterpiece of character development and suspense, rated PG-13. I discussed the city of Philadelphia in my deconstruction of The Sixth Sense, since M. Night Shyamalan features the city of brotherly love in his movies. And usually we see 90s movies set in either New York or Los Angeles, so when it isn't, I pay attention. The Church of Philadelphia in the Book of Revelation is known as the Faithful Church. This is the only church that Messiah doesn't rebuke or correct in any way, but rather encourages and rewards them for their works. But if we know anything about Hollywood Babylon, they are very good at storytelling and embedding lies and their own agendas, doing the deceptive works of the enemy, faithful to their father of lies. So, let's see what we see in Philadelphia. The movie opens on the city, of course, a character in its own right, and a bridge in full view. Shots of the city and suburbs, industry and operations, recreation and reliance, monuments and monumental loss. We meet our main litigator, Andrew Beckett, sitting before a judge with opposing counsel Joe Miller.
Let's not go off the deep end, gentlemen.
Andrew is for the corporate client, and Joe is for the common man. The two are already giving duality. We soon find Andy in a medical setting, receiving intravenous treatment. Several other sick-looking men are there as well, receiving treatment and therapy. But the work doesn't end for the busy lawyer, and it's back to the office where he's well-known and well-liked. He calls his mom to update her on his condition, which they haven't said outright, only implied.
Well, what does Dr. Gilman say?
As Andy works late into the night, he's called into an informal meeting with the firm's partners. In this meeting, Andy lands a big client and a promotion to senior associate. One of the partners notices a mark on Andy's forehead, which he brushes off as a bruise. But it's the beginning of a lesion, a visible symptom of AIDS.
Faith, Andy, is a belief in something for which we have no evidence.
It doesn't surprise me that these bigwig corporate fat cats are godless. They make their money, they wield their power, and their God is their insatiable appetite for more of both. 9 days after this late-night meeting, Andy's lesions are getting worse, and he has to work even harder in his new position. He completes the required brief for this big case and leaves instructions for his assistant as he's working from home. Technically, he's not working. He's been called out sick for a few days, and today is getting makeup tips to cover the lesions on his face.
Chandra, you don't think this is just a little too orange for me?
Well, okay, it's Tahitian bronze, and that works best on these lesions, okay?
Andy is declining quickly, and his friends take him to the hospital. His partner, Miguel, rushes to meet him there.
Oh, you got a fever, baby.
Andy's regular doctor took the day off, so someone else is running the tests, and Miguel doesn't take too kindly to not being considered immediate family. Meanwhile, the law firm is desperate to reach Andy. When he finally calls in, he learns the brief he worked on for the past 9 days to complete and left on his desk is now missing. Even the digital file is gone.
It's not here, Andy.
Not there. I'm on my way.
Cut to 1 month later, and Joe Miller is in the hospital, beside his wife, Lisa, who is giving birth to their daughter. 1 week after that, Joe is back in the office meeting with potential personal injury clients.
Now, you want to sue the city for negligence, right?
Yes. Do I have a case?
Yes. Yeah, of course you got a case.
Andy comes into Joe's office, looking to hire a lawyer for wrongful termination. And for the first time in the movie, Andy says the unspeakable thing.
I have AIDS.
Joe immediately puts distance between himself and the sick man. I can sort of remember the fear campaign around HIV and AIDS. At first, we didn't know it wasn't an airborne virus. But then the stigma was that it only affected gay men and intravenous drug users, neither of which were desirable lifestyles. It's possible Joe also has some misinformation about the disease and fears the close contact could affect his new baby. Andy tells Joe why he's there, to sue his large, powerful corporate firm, and that Joe is really his last-ditch effort because no one else will take the case.
How many lawyers you go to before you call me?
9.
We go to a flashback of a meeting when Andy was let go due to the important brief going missing. He's lost trust with the partners.
Excuse me. Am I being fired?
Joe discerns that Andy was concealing his diagnosis, and when the partners found out somehow, they made him look incompetent to have grounds to fire Andy rather than his illness. Joe declines taking the case for personal reasons. Could be the AIDS, or he doesn't want to bring a suit against a massive firm. Joe could potentially lose everything. Andy hasn't been disbarred. He's still a qualified lawyer and could represent himself in court, couldn't he? Out of an abundance of caution and clear ignorance, Joe visits his doctor, who tells him that HIV is only transmitted through bodily fluids, though this information doesn't put his mind at ease.
Yeah, but isn't it true that they're finding out all kinds of new things about this disease every day? All right.
When Joe talks to his wife, Lisa, she claims his uneasiness is because he has a problem with gay people, specifically gay men.
All right, well, hey, I admit it, okay? I'm prejudiced. I don't like homosexuals.
2 weeks later, the city is gearing up for Christmas.
Ho, ho, ho!
Christmas is an important holiday to Hollywood Babylon, and they love to include it in movies with all its symbolism. This perpetrates the false birthday of Messiah, keeping the world and even the church confused and steeped in false worship and counterfeit feasts. Now, before the internet, people would go to the library to research any given subject from books. This is where our opposing counselors meet again. Andy is, in fact, preparing his own case against his former firm.
Did you find a lawyer?
I'm a lawyer.
That's what I said. Joe sits with Andy to ask him about the particulars of the case he's building and is there any precedents. It seems Joe has witnessed some discrimination against Andy in the real world and may be confronted in his own heart. For whatever reason, he changes his mind about taking the case. 6 weeks later, Joe visits the partners at their executive suite at a basketball game in order to serve them with a court summons. Almost all the partners look to see this go to trial rather than quietly settling, except for one.
You didn't know he was sick, did you, Bob?
Holy shit, did you, Bob?
From the black and white hallway to a black and white home video, Andy and Miguel are visiting Andy's parents for their 40th wedding anniversary.
There, my handprints for when I was a cute little boy.
With the name Andy etched into the concrete, this feels like a call forward to Toy Story, when Tom Hanks would voice Woody the cowboy with the name Andy etched onto his boots. This would come out 2 years after Philadelphia. Maybe Toy Story should go on the deconstruction list. In the grainy recording, we are witness to the joyful Beckett family reunion. Back to colorized and back to reality. Andy debriefs his siblings, their spouses, and his parents about the upcoming trial, the hardships and publicity they may all have to endure. This is an incredibly loving and understanding family. There's no hurt, no trepidation, no doubt, only love.
I didn't raise my kids to sit in the back of the bus. You get in there and you fight for your rights, okay?
We get a sweeping shot of William Penn atop City Hall. Penn founded the state of Pennsylvania, by which it is named, and he was a staunch Christian, insisting on Christian values for the nation. His association was specific to the Quakers, conservative reformers, and it is his image that is the historical and current representation of the brand Quaker Oats. His religious determination was discarded when he died, and the state instead focused on commerce and industry instead of faith and morality. Trial begins, as they do, with opening statements. The counselors will need to convince a jury of their peers instead of a judge alone. Joe will represent Andy as the prosecution, and we meet defense attorney for the defense attorneys, Belinda Canine. Perhaps she is a lawyer at the firm Andy was fired from, but probably not. It seems a bit strange that these men would hire a woman to represent them rather than represent themselves or choose one of their own. But I digress.
Andrew Beckett is angry because his lifestyle, his reckless behavior has cut short his life.
Outside of the courthouse, crowds have gathered on either side of a political protest. One side for equal rights for LGBTQ, the other side an anti-gay rhetoric. Back in the 90s, we didn't have the familiar letters. It was just gay or straight.
Do you see this as a gay rights issue?
Part of the prosecution's case is that one of the partners knew that Andy's lesions were visible symptoms of AIDS because of his association at a former firm. The woman affected and infected there testifies her disease was a result of a blood transfusion and not as a result of her questionable behavior. So therefore, she deserves compassion for her circumstances, and Andy doesn't. Amid the tensions inside the court, the political argument rages outside and throughout the city. Joe, it seems, has taken the case simply because he believes there's been a miscarriage of justice. He's not pro-gay, he's pro-law, but his decision has firmly planted him as an advocate and ally and brings into question his own sexual preferences.
What's the matter with you? Do I look gay to you?
Do I look gay to you?
Day 10 of the trial, and we get some testimony about Andy's alleged incompetence, particularly with the case that got him fired. But Joe goes past the case and brings the debate to the bench.
So let's talk about what this case is really all about. The general public's hatred, our loathing, our fear of homosexuals.
At home with Andy and Miguel, we get our first real look at this couple alone together. Andy is focused on the case, something he's probably done 1,000 times before. And Miguel is focused on Andy and his treatment, something that feels new and scary.
You are worried. We don't have very much time left now.
Time has marched on, and it's Halloween. Andy and Miguel, dressed as naval officers, host a costume party where Joe and his wife attend and are exposed to the eccentric friends they have in the gay community.
You survived what I assume to be your first gay party intact.
In Andy and Miguel's apartment, all the walls are whitewashed brick. Brick is often another symbol used by Freemasons. Generally, we see checkerboards, black and white duality, sun and moon symbolism, twins, or blue and red. The bricks are the materials used by Masons, and we call the trade they practice Masonry. And I often refer to the Freemasons as the original builders of the nations. Bricks are a building material. Particularly, we see it in architecture in the oldest states and cities in America. proving once again the Freemasons had a hand in it. Joe and Andy are meant to be preparing for Andy to take the stand in court, but Andy loses himself in the thought of his own mortality through an operatic aria.
I am the God. Comes down from the heavens to the earth and makes of the earth a heaven.
Don't get it twisted. This isn't about Messiah, but Lucifer, the prince of the power of the air, and the whole scene washed in red. Joe gets uncomfortable and leaves quickly, and now the scene is washed in blue. Duality. Monday morning, Andy takes the stand. He's sworn in and questioned by his attorney, Joe.
Are you a good lawyer, Andrew?
I'm an excellent lawyer.
What makes you an excellent lawyer?
I love the law.
He's also cross-examined by opposing counsel about how he contracted HIV in the first place, which she claims speaks to Andy's credibility. Finally, Andy's former boss, Charles Wheeler, takes the stand to answer why he fired Andy if it wasn't because he was gay or had AIDS.
Andy insisted on bending the rules, and his work suffered tremendously in the long run as a result of that.
Who makes these rules that you're talking about, huh? You?
Read your Bible, Mr. Miller. Old and the New Testament. Pretty valuable rules in there.
Andy suddenly collapses in the courtroom. He's rushed to hospital and doesn't return to the trial. In his absence, another one of the partners takes the stand, and he admits he suspected Andy has AIDS, but it seems like he never talked about it to the other partners. The jury goes into deliberations to reach a verdict.
Would somebody please explain it to me? Like I'm a 6-year-old?
3 days later, they give their verdict, but it is not a unanimous decision. The jury also award $5 million in damages to Andy. Well, to his estate.
This trial is now concluded.
There's a celebration in Andy's hospital room, but it's tentative. Andy is dying quickly. I never noticed it before, but Andy is wearing a wedding band. Same-sex marriage was banned in Pennsylvania in 1996, and it wasn't even recognized before then. The ban was only overturned in 2014. Joe doesn't stay long, and the hospital room clears out, leaving Andy and Miguel.
Miguel. I'm ready.
Friends and family gather to tearfully remember Andy. An altar of remembrance is set up, and people light candles in his memory. This seems like a Catholic practice, but I thought the family was Jewish. Still, life goes on, as evidenced by the babies and toddlers in attendance, including Joe and his small family. A TV plays videotapes of old home movies from when Andy was still a child. The final image is perhaps 4-year-old Andy, dressed like a cowboy, which feels like another call forward to Toy Story. So much for character development. I don't think anyone was changed by their experience throughout the film. So, as always, we saw Freemason symbolism, duality between Andy and Joe, black and white tuxedos on the lawyers, red and blue lighting, the bricks. There was even a chessboard in the meeting with the partners in the beginning, and the law firm is called Wyant Wheeler throughout. And WW is a pointer to 33, the highest level of Freemasonry. Now Andy, the gay man dying of AIDS, was clearly framed as the hero, the good guy, the one we were supposed to believe and be rooting for, not only to win, but survive. He was loved at work until he wasn't. He was loved, accepted, and supported by his family, which was the real rarity, especially in the 90s. Joe was sort of the anti-hero. He wasn't deluded about his prejudice or his fears. He was only on Andy's side as much as he believed the law was on his side. As much as they kept insisting this was a movie about prejudice, discrimination, homophobia, and the HIV/AIDS propaganda, it really wasn't. Lawyers, in movies and in the world, are arbiters of the law. They need to be experts in their field and have intimate knowledge of the letter of the law and how to manipulate it for their clients, find loopholes, set precedents, and sometimes seek justice. In the Bible, the priests were the arbiters of the law of Moses. They had it written down from the wilderness and passed down for generations. They divided into sects based on interpretations long after they came into Jericho, the Promised Land. They added to it, took away from it, and made their own traditions, and then held the people to their own standards rather than Yahweh's standard. But the descendants of Aaron were the ones chosen by the Most High to be servants in the temple and arbiters of his law. And this seemed to be more a movie about the law than anything else. The law of the land and God's law. And Andy broke both. I don't think he was wrongfully terminated by his law firm or by the Most High. It seemed to me that both the Highline case for which he was fired and the terminal diagnosis of a deadly disease were both trials and judgments for Andy's negligence in his personal and professional life. He believed he was untouchable, and his nice guy attitude was enough to fool people. He claimed he was in a committed relationship, but cheated on Miguel and contracted HIV. He lied consistently and convincingly to his coworkers and bosses. They weren't aware he was sick, and they didn't even know he was gay. He even manages to fool Joe long enough to fight for him and win. But the message is clear. There are consequences for breaking the law, and Yahweh will have his justice. Thank you for enduring to the end. Give the video a thumbs up if you agree and a thumbs down if you disagree. Comment below what you think I may have missed, and to recommend any 90s movie you'd like me to deconstruct in the future. Subscribe to the channel if you want to, but don't follow me. Follow the one who saves you. And until next time, keep looking up.
Bruised and battered, I couldn't tell what I felt. I was unrecognized.
All right, explain this to me like I'm a 2-year-old, okay? Because there's an element to this thing I just cannot get through my thick head.